Hello and welcome. You're watching QTV and you're watching the Week in Review. I'm Ade Darami and here to go through the stories. Directly opposite me, I have friend and colleague Mamadou Mboj. As ever, usual welcome. Welcome to the program, Mr. Mboj.
Thank you very much, Ade.
And here signing for us, we have Lamin Sonko. He's now a regular on the program. And for anybody who's joining us for the first time, the program is called the Week in Review for a very good reason. We review 10 big stories from the week just gone by. So, what do we got? What's on the menu today? Well, His Excellency the President gave his State of the Nation address. We'll delve into that. And we might spend more on that than on some other stories, who knows. Also, we look at saltwater intrusion, particularly in Badibu, in the North Bank region. The Agriculture Minister, he's been to visit some rice fields for a particular project to see how that project is getting on. Also, we go sporting. Gina Bass, she's won yet another gold medal. And we have a couple of stories when we go abroad. We go to Kenya, where there's been a story that has been, it's gone all around the world. And we also go to Rwanda, where Kagame, president, is going for a 4th term. Those are some of the stories on tonight's program. So let's get kicking with the first one. His Excellency the President this week gave his 2024 State of the Nation address in front of the National Assembly. There was lots to digest. Here are a couple of snippets.
Since 2017, my administration has embarked on significant legal reforms. Our efforts include introducing a new constitution, and we remain committed to pursuing it this year. It is hoped that a referendum on the new constitution will be held in December 2024. Despite our successes, we will never heed less, no indifference to the concerns and needs of the people. Though steadfastly, we will use our resources, time and energy to develop the country, raise the standard of living, and strive to meet the basic needs of the population.
There we heard Mr. Mboj, His Excellency the President. Now you were on a panel that discussed it, so you had to pay particular attention. I watched it and I'm not sure, I didn't time it, but it seemed longer than last year's speech. Maybe I might have been wrong. But nonetheless, he packed a lot of detail into it. So if I could jump to you for some of the detail that was in there.
Oh,
what were the headline grabbers for you?
Absolutely. That was really one of them. Hopefully, he hopes that we'll have the referendum in December.
For the new constitution.
For the new constitution. Then we thought that wasn't very reassuring, Mr. President. Yes. When you think about it, Ade, he's really got a lot to trumpet.
Yeah,
essentially, that was how it started.
Sure.
First, the base economy grew by what, 5.3%
right.
in 2023.
Yeah.
And all the infrastructural gains. When you look around, you know, any objective survey will see a good number of roads being built or clinics in places that didn't have them
before. Yeah,
so the infrastructural aspects, you can see that there are many gains in there.
Yeah, sure.
Which he mentioned, and the clean, safe water for a good number of people, and sort of going to concentrate on manufacturing capability. These are the key areas.
Yeah, sure.
So all the good stuff that he mentioned, absolutely true.
Sure.
Only that perhaps
there's always a but.
They sit uncomfortably with some other
metrics.
Truths, some other metrics. When it's not blaming him, we're dealing within a context, an international context, isn't it?
Sure.
So, because when you look at the 5.3 growth, GDP growth, well, they'll tell you that the crucial measure here would be the per capita income.
Yeah, quite.
It's usually very low.
Yeah.
We went through a period when we would grow, the GDP would grow by what, 3, 4, 5%, yet per capita income 0.5.
Yeah, quite.
That is our reality. National poverty rate, 53.4%.
That's high.
According to World Food Program. Food insecurity increased from 8% 2016
Yes.
to now, I understand, 27% in 2022.
Right.
So there are certain key metrics, as we
Yes.
call them,
Mm-mm.
that are sort of worrying, and
Sure.
these are the things that would make a difference, really,
Indeed.
in the end.
This is it. So,
So-
those are some of the things that people look at.
Yes.
And also, when I went online, a lot of discussions, as you said, regarding the Constitution. I guess the reason he says he hopes that there will be this referendum is because it still has to go through the National Assembly before it goes to a referendum. And of course, we know what happened the last time. So I guess nobody wants to predict, not even the president, as to what would happen during the proceedings as it goes through the National Assembly before it gets to a stage where there's a referendum.
Absolutely. I just hope that perhaps you get the sense of what they want to do is that to hammer out, thrash out something that they all agree on.
That's
They
quite-
keep
that's
calling
kind
it
of what are the sticking
consensus.
points?
That's it. So
Pull
the
them out.
offending stuff, perhaps they will remove them, and this time perhaps they could be assured sort of really a vote. Yes, and you know that process, the parliamentary process takes so long.
Oh, it does. I mean,
So
we all remember what
I-
happened the last time. The debates went
absolutely,
on and on and
yeah,
on.
yeah. So
And sometimes one particular sticking point dominated for 3 days.
it will
So,
be
yeah.
quite an achievement if
Yeah.
we could go to the people, go to the country, if you like,
Sure.
in December regarding this one. That would be quite an achievement.
Okay, so
really.
we've talked about what was in it. What was missing? ECOMIG, diaspora,
So, yes,
local content.
local content.
You know, I mean, were you disappointed that some of these things were not at least touched on?
Absolutely. Adi, there's something going on, isn't it? It seems as if international development budgets are drying up.
Right.
So all the ways of resource mobilization
yeah,
and
right.
stuff like that. And you also realize that sooner or later we're going to have to find all the ways of making money. Local content, he wants the manufacturing capability.
That's it. Because remember, recently he went around and looked at some manufacturing establishments here, and he made the speech there where he said we need more of these, much more of these here.
Absolutely. So you must have the legislative framework to open that up, as it were. And that's just simple. And I understand that they had some discussions, businesses, people who supporting the kind of bill, and parliamentarians.
Right.
So, as perhaps
So
people
it could
expected that him to give us kind of feedback, as it
right.
were.
Yes,
and
that such a thing was imminent, but we didn't get that.
To sort of make it sound like it was a priority, one hoped that it was a priority. So that was quite interesting why it wasn't mentioned.
Yeah, sure.
You know, during our discussion, it was actually James Baum who sort of pointed it out immediately. So that was it.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, we could devote a whole program to that, but fortunately, we've got other stories to delve into. But thank you for that.
But perhaps now the debate begins.
I
as
guess
people really
this is
start to
because
digest.
It certainly started online straight away. You know, particularly, which is why I brought up, you know, what was left out, what could have been mentioned that wasn't, and so you kind of touched on.
That's it.
on
So
that
in Parliament, civil society, even the opposition, it will be interesting what the response would be from the opposition.
Which will come Monday.
Perhaps they will give us their own State of the Nation address.
Which will be a kind of shadow.
Quite interesting.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Butch. Thank you. And now on to a completely different story. One of our colleagues, I wouldn't say he was obsessed about this, but it was something that he was very concerned about. He went somewhere and he heard about saltwater intrusion. And he thought, oh, let me delve into this. And in fact, when he did delve, it was a lot worse than he had imagined. And that colleague is Mamadou Gajaka. Normally he does lots of sports, but he has lots of interests outside of sports. And this is some of what he found.
Since Senegal did a barrier to their side of the river tributary, saltwater intrusion began destroying plants locally called jungo and jamalo and fields. I still remember from 1968 to the 70s, no one was brave enough to pass this river tributary along because it was thick with grasses, trees and mangroves.
Mr. Mboj, we showed that, and Kazigat told me that the people who were speaking there were saying to him that, look, we're not making this up. This place was so thick with mangroves you couldn't even see, let alone wade through it. And now it's like a desert landscape almost.
Yes.
And really quite serious, because not only does it get into your fields, it then of course gets into your drinking water. So you're having to move further and further away to get to an area where it's not contaminated by salt. And so quite a serious problem.
That's it, and you read certain reports, they tell you that with increased climate change, you're going to have these tributaries of the River Gambia will really continue to be more saline.
This is
They'll
it, yeah,
become more saline. Absolutely, this is the issue. And it's been a problem for a while. We've been reading reports, really, surveys done mainly by international bodies, really.
That's
but
right.
we've been dealing with the situation. So now what do? You see, for instance, the person speaking there said that since Senegal built that barrier,
this is it, a sort of dam.
The dam, that's
and
it.
It diverted the water towards
there. This is one of the things that you do. Do we need to build on our side an embankment?
Well, this is it.
Protecting the ice.
And it
area.
reminds me of the sort of Great Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia, when that was built, how the other countries, neighboring countries, actually protested and said, oh, it's going to be doom and gloom and disaster. Well, it hasn't proven to be that, but certainly they made the noises. But you can get this where, and it made me think, was there any consultation saying, look, when we're building this dam, this barrier, it's going to affect our brothers in the Gambia. Maybe we should talk to them. I don't know. I mean, maybe those conversations did happen. Maybe they didn't. But nonetheless, the effects are there for all to see.
Absolutely. So how do we counter that? We heard the minister, Dr. Demba Sabali, saying that they're working on having saline-resistant rice varieties. How quickly can they get that? Because right now, those people are suffering.
Yeah, quite.
You know what I mean? So what would be the immediate measure really to help this community? And then broadly, how do you deal with this intrusion, saline intrusion, as it were, into certain farming communities?
So yeah, I mean, lots of big questions that need to be addressed, and I'm not sure we've found the answer yet. Yeah, but we're getting there.
That's how it is, isn't it? As problems emerge, then you try to find solutions, sustainable ones, not just makeshift sort of stopgap ones. You have to deal with the situation as it is now, but what is the longer term stuff that you don't have to, it stops being kind of instant, clear and present danger.
Quite. And there's a reason we chose that story and the next one. But thank you for that, Mr. Mboj, because the next one also features the Minister of Agriculture. Because in the longer piece of the story you just seen, he spoke. But this time we actually see him going around touring rice fields, and you'll see why there is a connection between the two. Have a look, have a listen.
Also in this tour is to use that opportunity to do an assessment of the preparedness of the Ministry of Agriculture as to the rainy season regionally. So that's why we are visiting all the agricultural regions except for KMC and Banjul. We are doing the entire province so that we have first-hand information as to the preparedness for the rainy season 2024.
So now we'll make a confession here. The reason these two stories follow each other is in the previous story, which was about the salt intrusion, we asked the minister for a specific reason. He's going around now checking on these rice fields, the Roots project, and pretty much it's been good. But as you alluded to in the previous one, when you have the salt intrusion where you used to grow rice, it means you have to think again, think maybe even outside the box. Okay, let's have salt-resistant varieties because we're talking about food security. And yet, when you can't plant, of course, then and then of course you go back to what you mentioned in terms of the State of the Nation address. These are some of the things that we need to look at. But Mr. Mboj, Roots project is gone on. On the whole, it's been pretty good, although there were some that didn't quite meet the targets that had been set for them as to how much how many hectares they should use for planting.
Absolutely, but the thing is to have this sort of input support program, isn't it? That's really what
is
they're
about,
for,
yeah.
helping farmers in the ploughing. You know, he
That
mentioned that he
that.
itemized them at discounted rate. He said, providing varieties, you know, high yield varieties and like fertilizer, herbicides,
seeds. Yeah.
That's it, but that's the preparedness that we're talking about.
Yes.
So, and agriculture, I think the growth that they measured last year, the 5.3 growth, agriculture also grew
quite a bit. That's right.
bit. Now, providing 25% of our GDP, but perhaps the goal should be for it to be much, much higher than that, isn't it?
Way
given its significance, you know, in our economy. In the 80s, it used to be 58%.
Yeah, quite.
I remember reading one budget, it was about 58%. That was what agriculture contributed to our GDP.
Right.
So this is the key, and here, given that 70% of employment?
Well, that's right. And so, you know, they talk about, you know, now they're trying to encourage young people to go into agriculture. We're trying to talk about stopping imports and so on. I mean, all of these, they're costly when we have to import food stuff, particularly when we have to import our staple food. And so, you know, we really need to ramp up on this. And I guess the Roots is kind of doing its bit, and others will help. Maybe 4 or 5 years we might see the benefits of it.
Absolutely, and the minister talked about mechanization, feeling that will be the sort of pull factor, as it were, for young people to come into it. Maybe.
Yeah. It may be, I mean, because if you look at it, I mean, some of them are saying that, you know, I don't want to do the back-breaking stuff that my grandfather did or my great-grandfather did in kind of tilling the land. If I can have a machine that can do it, then it might be more attractive, because really the benefits are there for those who've gone into it. And we've done stories here on QTV where people have gone into farming and they're making millions. And others look at it and think, oh, maybe I need to go into that. So the potential is there, isn't it?
Absolutely. Put that's all very true, but this is realizing it. Because when you look at our poverty levels, farmers are among the poorest.
This is it.
You know, the rural, I think about 75% or something like that. It's all rural people, rural farmers. Sure. So evidently they're not really making the money from that. So how can we change that?
Quite.
That's an important index there. How can we change and stuff like that? They're some of the poorest in the country.
This is it, and I think that's why sometimes when they make the statement that we want more young people to go into farming, they look and think, I know a few farmers, they're not that rich, why should I go into it?
So how do you make it profitable?
Profitable,
even though now we're beginning to see, we've got a few big ones, as it were.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, they're making money, really. You have that, but a good number of them are not, especially in rural Gambia.
Yeah, quite.
Rural Gambia is just extraordinary.
Farming,
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that. Thank you so much. And that takes us to story number 4, and a completely different change of tack. Gina Bass, she's grabbed yet another gold medal. Yes, she really has. And I guess this is in preparation for the Olympics. She's getting right up to speed, pun intended. Have a look, have a listen.
African Games champion Gina Mariam Bass Biteye of the Gambia won the women's 100 meters final, taking home the gold medal in a timing of 11.14 seconds in the highly competitive African Seniors Athletics Championship held in Douala, Cameroon. 2 of the athletes expected to give her a close run. Côte d'Ivoire's Marie-Josée Talou, the African record holder for the distance, and Nigeria's Favour Ofili, failed to make it to the start line of their respective semi-finals despite having comfortably won their heats. Bass Biteye is gradually improving her performance in the sprint as she prepares for the Paris Olympic Games.
As I mentioned there, and as our colleague echoed there, she's preparing for the Paris Olympics. I was really looking forward to quite a contest in this one, and so were my Niger people, the Nigerian newspapers. They were full of this new star, Favour Ofili, who ran very well in the heats, ran very well in the semi. In fact, I think she won her heat, but failed to make it to the semi-final. So we didn't get the great contest that we were hoping for. And the same thing happened with Marie-José Talou, when the thing came up on the screen, you had DNS, does not start. And so we thought, oh, so the tough contest she was going to, but that's what she needs. But nonetheless, she still faced a strong field, and she beat them.
Absolutely.
African Seniors Championship.
Yes, well, they'll probably miss in the Olympics.
Well, this is it. This is true.
The big word.
Yeah, quite.
Absolutely. So I was just wondering, is Gina really our most successful athlete ever?
I think on the international stage,
absolutely,
incontestably, yeah.
The Diamond League, Stockholm.
That's right. Recently,
she's
a high quality field she beat to win that one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's it. So now the ambition is that to be in the finals in the Olympics.
Well, this is it. Yes, and it's about preparation. You know, how do you prepare her? How do you prepare the relay team? They're not up to the speed of Gina, but nonetheless, you always have a chance if you have a Gina Bass in your team. And who knows, we've seen unfancied teams, relay teams win when, you know, one of the favorites fell over. Not wishing any ill on any athlete, obviously. But come the Olympics, the competition will come from the Americans, from some of the British, and of course from the Caribbean.
Yeah, exactly. Especially the Jamaicans.
Especially the Jamaicans.
But
she's in good form, and I heard her say, and she was being realistic. She didn't say, I want to win a medal. She said, I want to make it to the final.
Absolutely.
And of course, once you make it to the final, anything can happen.
Anything can happen.
Yeah, you know, so you know, we wish her well.
Absolutely, because
she's on good form.
That's it. And she's in there. She's got a plan.
This is
the way she said it.
Yeah.
I want to get to the final.
Yeah,
she's got something to aim for, as it were.
Yeah.
And the confidence must be high.
Yeah. Yes,
that is highly significant as well.
And that's something that you can't underestimate. We've seen it with teams that have kind of never won anything before. They win one thing and it kind of inspires them. And we've also seen it even with fighters. You know, they have one very good victory and suddenly the confidence level just ramps up. And it seems to be the same with Gina. Winning this African Seniors Championships and winning it in a decent time and beating a good field of athletes must inspire her with enormous confidence.
I mean, let's be honest, the confidence, true, genuine, honest confidence is like a drug.
Yeah,
you know, it adds extra adrenaline of some sort.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And in competitive sports,
sure.
Key. Otherwise, it doesn't work at the very highest level.
Sure.
So now she knows her body. She knows that the time that really she needs to run. So how all of that would play, you know, in her preparation.
Yeah, quite.
You know, it will be interesting to know. But she seemed they're determined. You can tell that this young woman's got a plan, and she seems determined to get there.
Yes.
Good luck to her.
Good luck, Gina. We hope you get to the final and win a medal. Thank you for that, Mr. Mbooj. Up to story number 5 now. Minister of Higher Education. I interviewed him some months ago, and he was very, very bullish and enthusiastic about what was going to happen in the field of education. And the same happened when our colleague, Maudlin Choi, went to see him. Here's some of what the Higher Education Minister had to say.
By the way, end of this year, the first cohort of engineers will graduate, will complete, which means that we will be making history. I mean, since 1965, since we got independence, this will be the first time we will produce homegrown engineers. We now understand the technical problem we are having and so on. These road networks and all, most of them are non-Gambians. I keep on saying that we have a technical problem, and the technical problem must have a solution, and the solution is a system of containment.
Mr. Mbooj, we heard there, he's talking about engineers, and we're talking about local content. If you don't have the qualified people, we'll always import people. Now, I don't want to pick a fight with the minister, but I think when the convocation, UTG convocation earlier this year, a few months back, they did announce that 10 people had graduated in civil engineering. I know because I happened to be celebrating in the office and my colleagues thought I was mad. But again, signs of progress, Mr. Mboji, in education. So it's not just the physical structures that are improving. We're also going into fields that really we should have gone into many, many years ago. As he said, since independence, this is the first time we've had people graduating as engineers.
Absolutely, and the transformations, isn't he? He's sort of, when you look at him, you think that that man looks like he's enjoying his job.
As one of our colleagues said, she said, every time I see him on the screen, I think there might be some lazy ministers, but he's not one of them, you know. But yeah, he seems to be somebody who enjoys his job.
But this is the key. So GTTI before, now USET, University of Science, Engineering, Technology. Gambia College will also be changed to a university.
We're doing this to kind of catch up with the world, because the criticism that Africa has always faced is that we seem to concentrate on subjects that kind of slightly esoteric, you might say, rather than what we need to kind of move our countries to the next level, which is why we're always importing all sorts of experts, in quotes, rather than producing our own.
Even University of Civil Service, NDI.
Well, this is
this is it. Yes, it's a good idea. I remember the time when in Britain all polytechnics were turned to universities.
Including one of the ones I attended, North London Polytechnic, became a university of North East London, I think it is now.
So this is it. But as we normally say, a university or a school is just not a building. It's not simply a name.
It's what's behind
what's behind it. So that would be interesting. We have to put the proper stuff. No cutting corners. Cannot sell the students short.
Well, this is it. So that in mind, we heard about the volunteer lecturers coming from Nigeria recently, coming to exactly fill in these positions where we don't have any of our own. And so again, it's all part of a plan. It's not just going to haphazard. They seem to have this quite structured. And so that's yet another thing that we should
that's the ones going to use that. Because we don't have lecturers of that level, of that caliber.
That's right.
But yes, in the short term, to medium term, even we'll be relying on these foreign expertise, this cooperation, these partnerships.
Well, indeed, yes.
You know what I mean? And after all, we are all part of ECOWAS, and they occupy a leadership role, and we have this good relationship. We should have it with others as well. So wherever you can get help from, you get it, and then make sure that you use it well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That's the idea.
And also, I mean, I have no qualms with it, because you know, you go to Oxford, Cambridge, you go to Harvard, they have all these African lecturers who've come from African countries. So, you know, if we get some from another sister African country, so much the better.
That's it. And here, really, the underlying stuff is really human capital.
Indeed.
Isn't it? Indeed. Because really, when you look at, I looked at our human capital index. You see, all these things are judged. It's important to know that the efforts we're putting in and the scale of the problem. Apparently, we're given 42.4%, essentially meaning that this was in 2020, 2022. So you only sort of fulfill 42.5% of your potential. Extraordinary. You know, so that's really the challenge. There's still a gap. So that's really the challenge. These are some of the key indicators that really one should tackle. That's really where the fight is.
Indeed, and the fight that we're willing to fight. Thank you, Mr. Mboji. And that nicely takes us on to the midway point. We'll take a break, and don't go away. Join us after this quick break.
Looking for internet for your free videos, pictures, chats, work, and school projects? Think Free Night Browsing. QCell's Free Night Browsing lets you browse the internet for free. Oh yeah. Get a data SIM, recharge a minimum of $500 C, and enjoy free browsing after 24 hours from midnight to 6 a.m. every night for 30 days. QCell, Sunubus. We innovate, others follow.
Hello and welcome back. You're watching QTV and you are watching the Week in Review. I'm Adi Darami and going through the stories with me so far, 5. Mr. Mboj. Mr. Mboj, thank you very much. And doing the signing, Lamin Sonko, still with us. And he's been with us for, I think this is the 3rd or 4th week. So let's hope he stays. And story number 6, which means you've missed 5 ones, but we still have 5 very, very good ones still to go. Including this one. We commemorate and celebrate or do stories on lots of these international days. There are UN days mainly. And some of them, they don't particularly have any resonance with the Gambia, but this one did, the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Drug Trafficking. Why does it matter? This might tell you.
On the public to be vigilant and report suspicious drug-related or criminal activities to law enforcement officers. It is imperative for us all to collaboratively work together with renewed commitment and dedication to end this endemic for a safer, healthy, and drug-free society.
Do not adjust your set. That was the Defense Minister, but he was speaking in place of the Interior Minister who is out of the country. So in case you were wondering why is the Defense Minister speaking about this kind of stuff. But Mr. Mboj, I mentioned about this day having a particular resonance for us because we've seen recent incidents where people have been arrested for drug abuse and drug trafficking, mainly drug abuse, particularly Kush recently, but other drugs as well. So this does have meaning for us. It's not just another abstract day.
Absolutely, it resonates, obviously, just as you've just said. But they're listening to the minister there. It just reminded me, remember the Just Say No
Just
campaign.
Say No. Quite.
Just say no doesn't work.
Yeah,
We've seen
telling us to be vigilant.
stuff like that, and people, you shouldn't take it. Somehow there's a bug in youth that really makes them want to experiment with the most dangerous things.
We saw that in the story that our colleague Gajaga did.
Yes.
Not Gajaga, I beg your pardon, the one that I think it was Zainab Chow's
yes.
where it was Gajaga who did the voiceover at one point of the story. But the guy said it was the first time I'd taken it, and you know, I just wanted to try it. Absolutely. And it was such a horrific experience. He said never again. Absolutely. But you're right. So we need to do more than just say no, but also the word that we banned in our newsroom, our porous borders, mean that, you know, drugs come in and out of the country, and it's very, very hard to keep track of the traffickers. They'll always find a way around it.
Well, the theme here is the evidence is clear. Invest in prevention.
Yep. This is it.
So what are the preventative measures that you're gonna put in place? And treatment. They also tend to also emphasize treatment.
Yes, and we don't tend to. You know, people, we're kind of more punitive rather than say, oh, this person has a problem, they need to be treated. We just don't have the facilities, and we're not putting funds to create the facilities, are we really?
Absolutely. Yeah. So you have these effects on the individual, but again, societal consequences as well. Yeah, will it be organized crime around drugs, drug trafficking, and that sort of thing? Yeah. Even petty theft, certain crimes also
that are linked to because people might want to feed a habit or whatever.
Feed a habit. So you'll probably go and start stealing. You know, so absolutely, this is going to be a really very difficult one, because you need all sorts of things to be in the right place to move kids, for kids not to think about drugs. Sure. Sometimes, apart from the sense of wanting to experiment, sometimes you go through certain episodes in life, as it were. You know, you're running away from something. It's pure escapism.
Yeah, quite. For many
people go to drugs for some of these reasons. So it's important to know some of the reasons that drive people into it. and see what we can do.
And that's
when
why
we have
some
a
countries
good
have-
economy,
Yes.
and even parks.
Yeah.
Let's be more child-centered
Well, yeah,
in our
quite,
thinking.
quite.
I don't
Yeah.
think we are in many ways. We
Yeah,
don't
quite.
think like that.
Mm-mm.
But again, you need a lot of outlet, as it were.
Sure,
I think when we were younger, you had more basketball lawns,
Sure.
or recreational
Quite.
spaces. There were
Well,
more
I-
recreational spaces.
yeah.
Now you don't even have that.
Yeah,
Really,
yeah.
not much. We're converting everything into commercial.
Yeah, quite.
We've completely commercialized.
Sure.
So these important cultural
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
things that we should be doing, we
Sure.
don't really do.
Sure.
We've just sacrificed everything to Mormon.
Oh, this is quite true and quite scary. And I try and go through every program without mentioning Cabo Verde. But if you go on Cabo Verde, you type in the search engine and say Mindelo Praça Amilcar Cabral Square. There's a park. You go to Santiago, where the capital is, there's a park. You go to Fogo, the island of fire, the island of volcano, there's a park. And people hang out there, young and old. It's just a beautiful place, lots of flowers, benches where people just chill, hang out and so on. I don't see any of that here.
Absolutely.
And people go and we need these things. They're not just furniture. They're sort of civil spaces that people can enjoy together. And we need more of that.
We've just been sort of such easy rollover, as it were, by this commercial juggernaut. They want every sort of land.
Every inch.
Every inch.
Oh,
remember
yes.
in Britain, people had to fight back
to keep their parks.
to keep their parks,
Quite.
because the commercial, that's what it does all the time.
Yeah.
So perhaps you need sort of combination of what civil society,
Yeah, quite.
and also the state to protect. Everything is not about simply commercial.
Well, this
It
is
doesn't
it.
work like that. You're trying to build a society. There are different elements to it, including even just the simply aesthetic.
That's it. So if people think these guys have gone off topic, no. What we're trying to
They're
say
all
in a kind of shorthand form
really.
is that this is all linked. Dealing with drugs is not just about punishing people. It's also about creating places where people can enjoy and have a good quality of life. And some of the things they're trying to escape from, they might not need to escape from if they have somewhere where they can go and hang out, they can chill, etc., etc.
But when you're hopeful, you have stuff to do.
Yeah.
You don't really look at drugs that much. It's really when you idle. No one looks, the proverb is well, the devil creates
makes
work for
idle
idle hands.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Sure.
So when you have a lot of kids going into drugs, we have to be honest. That tells us something about the society. We cannot escape from
Why are
that
they doing it?
and just say that, oh, these are the bad lot.
No, quite.
We are okay, but they are the bad lot. That is so true.
Yeah, quite.
So there is a link between the two. So it's the general welfare, as it were, the healthy atmosphere of a culture, really, that makes a massive difference.
It does indeed. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboch. Story number 7. Our National Assembly has decided to adopt a code of conduct, and it is one that is self-regulatory. Have a look to some of the National Assembly members talking about it.
Sometimes it's a disgrace where when proceedings is on, the entire chamber is empty. They only come forward when there is a voting time.
This regulates us even outside the National Assembly. We are regulated even outside the National Assembly. Our conduct outside the National Assembly is regulated by the instrument. So I will urge honorable members that let's be very careful what we do outside.
We have to also live to expectations as honorable members of parliament. So I want to also congratulate and salute the entire membership here that we are about to make history in the making for the 6th legislature, for the first of its kind since independence, having such initiative that we want to make sure that to assess ourselves, hold ourselves accountable to our electorates, the very people that really vote us in here.
I'm smiling because people are people. And one of the things I've learned from living in Sierra Leone and in the Gambia, Mr. Mboch, is that we're very good at passing various laws and having lots of pieces of paper and patting ourselves on the back. A code of conduct has to live and breathe. It has to be more than a piece of paper. We're talking about, will it end empty chambers? Will it regulate the conduct of people outside of Parliament? Can a code of conduct for the National Assembly really do that?
How effective are they?
It's self-regulatory.
Absolutely, yeah. This self-regulation. But still, it's a good thing to have that. So they're going to have to demonstrate to us how serious they are about it. Yes. Are they going to have an active monitoring mechanism?
Which is,
as it were, in place.
I suspect civil society might end up doing that for them if they don't do it themselves.
Doing that, and they're truancy there.
Well, quite.
Like truant
for example, in Britain, there's a site which publishes members of Parliament and how much time they spend in the House, and it's not kind of a thing that's peculiar to the Gambia, where people don't turn up except for when it's voting time. Happens all over the world.
Happens all over the world. I was about to say that, bring that example. That's exactly it. So once in a while, you're going to have that. Let us be grown up about it. It's not mandatory, coming very hard and say it's compulsory. You have to attend everything. It doesn't work like that.
No, quite. But one of the reasons why they do it in Britain is because people can then use it, and when you have your weekly surgery, they go to their MP and say, "I've just read online that you were not in Parliament for the whole of this week. Why not? Why weren't you?" But we don't have that culture here yet.
No, we don't
So, as I said, it might end up lying in the lap of civil society to be the kind of monitoring and make sure that if they do pass this code of conduct, if it is adopted, that they stick to it.
Absolutely. So that is it. It's a good thing to have. Yes, sure. They have committed themselves to do to these things, so we will hold them to account.
We will indeed.
It's important for them to have that.
Indeed. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. Story number 8, and I know time is fast rushing up on us. The GCCI, Gambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, recently convened a stakeholders meeting for the agriculture sector. I read somewhere where it said a meeting of relevant stakeholders. I'm sure everybody who's a stakeholder is relevant, but nonetheless, it was an interesting one because it was for the agri sector, and it had everybody from every sphere who had anything to do with agriculture. They were brought together. Have a look, have a listen.
What is the stumbling block that we can't embrace all these new solutions to ensure that efficiency is guaranteed in agriculture and sustainability is guaranteed in agriculture? Growth, which is the most imperative of all, is also guaranteed in agriculture.
New solutions, Mr. Mboj, we were talking about, people going into farming or not going into farming, and really it's good that they had all these people together, farming organization, government, market professors and so on, and said, well, how can we improve the whatever the thing is for the sector so that we all benefit from it, or that it performs better than it is already?
Absolutely. Only a sort of GCCI really is a sort of platform can do, as it were, better than anybody else were possible, bringing all these different parties, these players, all these players into it. But this is it. Have you realized now we covered, 3 stories on agriculture? That's it. It's the season. Everybody's talking about it. We're trying to come up with solutions, looking at the challenges and trying to come up with solutions. That's really the key. Early on we said, can you imagine just a measly 25% of GDP from agriculture? It's massive, it's huge.
It should be much higher.
So let's say, how do we do that? Sure. And the value chain, the processing systems that we said that we want to introduce as well. So, and the GCCI, how do we bring private capital? That must be a massive challenge. That must be one of their priorities.
I gave, when we discussed this in the office, I gave somebody the example. I said, imagine in the days past when some of these Arab countries used to send their oil out to be processed and then come back as fuel for them to use in their cars. And so imagine we grow cashews, we grow groundnuts. We should process, package and sell them here to the extent where we wouldn't even think about importing.
Exactly.
Yet I can go into a shop and there'll be shelves full of salted peanuts and salted cashew nuts from outside the Gambia, rather than from within the Gambia. So we're just not making use of what it is we have already.
Absolutely, and the surplus you can sell.
Yeah, well,
that's
well, this
fine.
is it, yeah.
But that's it. But the structural changes that we need, perhaps to bring about a situation where agriculture would contribute, for instance, 50%.
Would be
something like at least
Would be
50%.
Yeah, quite.
So that's really what we need to focus on, and it appears as if a good number of hands are on deck right now, given the stories that have been
I remember some years ago when my father was the Minister of Information in Sierra Leone, he went to Germany to buy stuff for the army and police and for the radio and TV stations, equipment. And a minister there said to him, why is your country investing so much in diamonds when agriculture could bring Sierra Leone a lot more money than diamonds? And that was 1968.
Absolutely.
And my father was lost for words because the guy said, I've been to your country, and he said, I've seen how fertile the land is. He said, and yet you're not putting as much effort into agriculture as you should be. You're all waiting for diamonds to come out of the earth and think that's what's going to make you money. I don't think that's changed. In fact, I know it hasn't changed.
Absolutely, which is quite baffling, isn't it?
Yeah, quite.
Those who took over the state were more into offices and towns and that sort of thing. Somehow agriculture, that was for rural people.
Exactly.
Whatever they grow, they bring it over to us. You know, we are fed, and even though you're still poor, we don't pay you much for it. Really, this is what's been going on.
Sure.
But perhaps now there has been sort of a reorientation, I think.
And what was good to hear at this GCCI event is that people were exchanging ideas about how they could improve, including the kind of processing and value addition that is missing big time from agriculture in the Gambia. It's mainly just they pull and you send to market and you sell. You know, hardly anything is processed and canned, etc., etc. And that's what we should be thinking about. And those are some of the discussions that were had.
So that way you move away from that colonial relationship, because that's really what we've been doing. The raw commodity, that's what you give it and you sell, you ship it, and then they bring it back as something else, and then you pay so much.
It's quite bizarre.
I think we've come to the sell-by date
of that.
Of that. We're beginning to realize that we are caught in a loop here. You'll just be going around in circles.
And we need to jump off that. We need to jump off that merry-go-round.
Break it.
Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And that takes us to our penultimate story. And the next two stories take us away from home. And the first one takes us to Kenya, where President Ruto, even as I speak, is facing a serious challenge to his authority. What's that all about? Have a look, have a listen.
Promise the country that there will be no extrajudicial killings going forward. And ever since I came into office, there is not one incident of extrajudicial killing. What you said about abduction are statements that were attributed to some of our civil society groups, but all the people they mentioned have since been found in police custody.
There you heard the president addressing the protests that have gripped Kenya this week and last. And just quickly, the bit about abduction, that was a question that he took from the floor. Somebody said, what about the people who've been abducted? And in fact, they'd been arrested. But the person used the term abducted. And so that's what that was about. Well, Mr. Mboj, we haven't seen anything as serious as this as maybe 2008 or the election, when the violence was quite grim. 24 people killed nonetheless in this current round of protests, and that was quite shocking, because initially when he gave his reaction to it, 6 people had been confirmed dead. But in fact, when the news came out that in fact 24, that kind of reignited in spite of him climbing down from the finance bill.
That's it. And you know, the last time there was certain ethnic element to it and the like. But this one is a very different one.
It is indeed.
It seems everybody, it's a generational, some of them they've been calling it Gen Z, or Gen Z,
as the Americans are forcing us to call it.
But
But Generation Z, in case anybody's,
absolutely.
That's the young people, under 30 or whatever. Yeah.
They're simply fed up.
God.
So, when I watched it, I thought, oh, I wish that when the IMF sort of were imposing things with us in the 1980s, the ERP, Economic Program, which really in many ways damaged a lot of stuff because you stop spending on people, retrenchment, food is expensive. It's really difficult. These people came out and said no. And it was really part of what I think an IMF condition.
Just before I came into the studio, the IMF put out a statement, which I'm not sure they should have put out. They said they regret the loss of life, and then it ends by saying that nonetheless they hope the president will stick to policies that will put Kenya back on the economic right path. And I thought, why did you have to add that?
But this is it, isn't it? Almost like a condition for them, because I think this loan that they want, which again,
there are certain conditions.
You have to increase your resource mobilization aspects. So this is the key, tax, and perhaps we should also take note. You don't really build a nation by putting high taxes. For God's sake, how do you do that? That is really not the solution at all. If you're going to tax businesses, well, they employ less.
They employ less, or you even drive them out of your own country.
Drive them out of your country. If it is people, well, I buy less, no purchasing power. That sort of thing. Tax is really not the way to do it. So of course, we realize that we need to pay our taxes, but we be careful how you do it. But the kids, the younger generation, they've sort of made him backtrack. That was backpedaling.
It really was, but they've now upped the ante by saying they want him to step down. They've issued like 15 demands, and it ends by saying, most of all, we want you to resign because of these deaths, particularly.
Well, I think that perhaps that's a step too far.
Yeah, sure.
He had the mandate from the people. Let's go wait for the elections, really, where we can decide that. It was an important climb down. You've made your point. I'm not sure whether you should go for an overkill.
Well, this is it, which is what they seem to be going for. But thank you for that, Mr. Mboch. And now we're not moving very far from Kenya. We're going to Rwanda for our next story. President Kagame is facing a challenge from two challengers. He might smile at the word challenge. You might smile at the word challenge. But at least he's competing against two others in the upcoming elections in Rwanda. Have a look. Have a listen.
Mr. Kagame will face two other politicians, Frank Habineza of the Democratic Green Party and Philip Mpeyimana, in the race to become president. Habineza ran during the last presidential race and received less than 2% of the votes. Undeterred by the setback, the Green Party continued its political efforts and participated in the 2018 parliamentary elections, securing 2 seats. Meanwhile, Philip Mpeyimana is running for president for the second time. He first ran in 2017, getting 0.72% of the total votes. Philip Mpeyimana is an independent candidate and journalist by profession who lived in Europe before running for president in this election.
And those pictures have not been doctored, by the way. Those were their political rallies. I'm not sure in this clip whether we saw Kagame's one, but he came into a stadium, I beg your pardon, of 35,000 people. I mean, we're laughing because in the last election he got 98.7% of the vote. This is just, again, one of the people who didn't get selected said the Electoral Commission is okay, these people, because they're not a threat. To Kagame, but is anybody a threat to him, realistically?
They were the two who contested the last one. It's the same two. And Diane Rwigara, the difficult one, the outspoken critic, not bad, I love. He's quite an operator, isn't he?
He really is. So it looks like he might get his 4th term. I think it's a foregone conclusion if ever there is such a thing in politics.
But this is the interesting thing about Paul Kagame. You see, yes, going for his 4th term, but Western governments sort of like him.
They like him.
But the Western media, they always vilify him. Oh, his human rights record, we all go on about that. The rest of us, I think, in Africa, I think he's got more admirers
than detractors.
Than detractors.
I think
that's
right.
my suspicion,
That's right.
really. You know, I have to be honest with you, I don't really like 2-term limits. I know that this is unpopular. I don't like term limits. It's an American, really, they introduced it, but only in the 1930s.
Well, this is true.
They had gone on from 1776 to the 1930s and stuff like without Roosevelt, what did, 3 terms, stuff like that. We don't necessarily have to follow them. I like the British style. Let's just have rigorous democracy. Whatever the people want, I may want you there for 3 terms. You've taken away something from the people. It's very legalistic. Somebody noticed that some constitutions are more legalistic than political. I like a more political stuff. What people decide, what people want. I don't want unelected lawyers telling me how far I can go with my politics. It is dangerous. The law, all of them, they are not elected into office.
This is it.
I prefer Parliament to be sovereign than the courts.
Let the people choose. If they get fed up of Kagame, they'll vote for somebody else.
Of course, it's dangerous, of course, because sometimes we, mob the mob. We can come up with some mad ideas.
I sent a note. I didn't get a response. Perhaps by the time I come out of this program, I will get a response. I said that the fact that state TV seemed to be showing all of his rallies in full, I said, is that not an abuse of state resources? But I don't think they didn't bother to reply. Certainly not before, not by the time I came on air. So perhaps I'll go back and find a reply from them. But I was being kind of slightly cheeky because I knew that essentially they have been mobilizing state resources for that. But we've got a minute to go, and so if we can just tie up Kagame, as it were.
Come on. Does he follow some of his enemies to South Africa and kill them? I'm sure he does.
He probably does.
Sometimes power does certain things. But on the whole, I think that it's been a good thing that is there for more than 20 years. When you're building, especially something like Rwanda, what happened
from
in
where he's building
from. You need continuity. We are falling into a trap. What really can you do in 5 years, 10 years in societies that are quite not formed yet? You know what I mean? We're in the process of formation.
I mean, my friends who are his supporters who've gone from England and moved back to Rwanda, that's kind of what they've been telling me, that look, we know where we're coming from, and we can't pretend that there had been stability and he's just come and taken over. He's come from a very, very low base of where we were to where we are now. We're not willing to surrender that.
The short-term horizons may be appropriate in the West, but not for us. So we're into this trap of really following what they do. It doesn't work here. You need the long haul, the long vision, as it were. You need some time, but you have all sorts of ideas about you need to, you can't stay there for long, 2 terms and all the rest of it. I disagree. I completely disagree with that.
So I think Kagame will be smiling to hear you say that.
Absolutely.
But thank you, Mr. Mboj, and also to Lamin Sonko for the signing. Thank you. And to you, the viewers, thank you for watching. Until we come your way again next week, hopefully. Goodbye.